Welcome to Debating Dating, a podcast with me, Marc Jennings.
And me, Rachel Graham.
We are two single friends. In every episode, we'll be discussing our differing perspectives on an aspect of modern dating.
We'll be sharing our honest insights and experiences as platonic pals who are not afraid to give each other the unvarnished truth.
Or laugh at each other's bullshit.
So this week we're going to be chatting about red flags. So we had quite a lot of interest on our social media of people wanting us to chat about red flags, and I think it's like a really common thing in dating right now where people are kind of recognising like bad behaviour or recognising, you know, that maybe that's someone that they shouldn't be pursuing, and then it's become this thing of being like a very like common phrase of being like, oh well, that person is a red flag. So it was kind of an interesting one where we started to think, is this like as serious as you'd think it would be? Is it this kind of thing of like, you know, really toxic, dangerous people, and now it's become more of a kind of punchline, and it's become more in popular culture, people being like, oh well, you know, this is like they're into this, so they're a red flag, you know?
Aye. And so now it's got to the point where, you know, a red flag's like if somebody eats cheese and onion crisps or something like that, and you're like, oh, that's a red flag or whatever.
That is a red flag.
No, it's not. Cheese and onion is the best kind.
Yeah, but honestly, hell is other people's crisps. You know, if you're sitting and you're not eating crisps and then someone else is eating cheese and onion or pickled onion or something, I'm like, that is a huge red flag.
Yeah, hell is other people's crisps. That is quite a statement. Jesus Christ.
I stand by that. I say a lot of things on this podcast, but honestly, hell is the smell of other people's crisps.
Fair enough. Okay, well that gives, certainly that's a red flag for you. A blue/green, depending on what type of crisp you've got, packet. A green packet is a red flag for Rachel when it comes to crisps. But so we're going to be talking about red flags today. We've got a few submissions from the listeners that we'll listen to as ever, and we're joined by a fantastic guest, Paul Dock, who you might know from Twitter, just a very funny guy on the Scottish Twitter scene with his videos and tweets, and he's a very good pal of mine and knows Rachel as well. So he was kind enough to join us to have a wee chat about red flags today. So please enjoy the episode with Paul Dock talking about red flags. Let me ask you this, Paul. I hope you're alright with me asking. So, one of these walks of the last year, we've kind of been asking guests, like just in terms, obviously, last year of COVID and all that. How's your year been in terms of dating and things like that?
Well, I'm back with my parents, so it's not been too good, to be honest. I'm a bit kind of constrained by what I can really do, so
Aye.
Spoke to a few people and stuff. I spoke to people at different times, but it's not been particularly. There's no real ability to go and meet people and do too much or whatever and hang out with them or go for drinks or anything. So
it's so hard, isn't it? Constraint is the word, constrained, like of just being like, there's all these things in place making it hard to date. So sometimes it's easy to be like, there's no real point until things open up, but things are open now, so
things are open. Thank God as well, because like even let's say with the pubs, even the gym, right, it just gives you an excuse as to where you might be going at night. Because like, see when it was lockdown, if you wanted to go and meet somebody off Tinder or whatever, you'd need a pure alibi. It's like all you had was like, I'm going to Asda at 10 o'clock at night and I'll not be back till 3 a.m.
Gotta get those deals.
Aye. So at least now there's a few other plausible places that you could go that are within the rules and all that, but it's like before it's just been like, there's like you would absolutely just need to confess to your parents, right, I'm going to meet somebody, right? Just
even at the moment though, if you're to go to the pub and meet somebody, it just feels a wee bit, I think it would just be a bit intense. Like I've not been to the pub in so long, and if the first time you were going back to the pub was just to go on like a pure super intense date with somebody, I think it would just be a bit much, really. Like sitting at the tables. I met I met a lassie recently, actually. Well, when things opened up like last year, kind of thing, and it was quite weird because you were to sit at a table and we were like crammed right to the front, and you had to order from like an app and all this kind of stuff, and it was just a bit weird. Like, just felt like you were just constantly at this wee table with all these people coming up and walking past and stuff like that. But
it's so awkward. I went to the pub yesterday and I just went with my friend, and there was so many like things you had to do with the apps and all that I was thinking, this is my really good friend and it's really awkward. Like we were both like, this is so awkward. Like I'm pure putting in my like card details and stuff. So if you're on a date, it would be even worse. Like I can see, and also we've waited so long, haven't we? Like it's that thing of being like, we've been so desperate for the pubs to reopen that it feels weird to share it with someone that you don't know.
And you're walking on eggshells as it is on a first date usually anyway, and then there's all these other mad weird things like, that you can't do because of COVID. So it's like you're already not sure, how close to get to them or something like that. And then COVID comes in and it's just like it adds that. So I don't know. I mean, obviously things are opening up a wee bit. I don't really know when that will change in terms of like, maybe another year before it's like you're allowed to just hug somebody you've just met or something like that. Who the fuck knows? But it's been an awkward one, that's for sure.
I know. I went on a date similar time to you, where it was like when things were reopened, and the date didn't go very well. But I got chatting to this woman at the table next to us, and now I work at her pub, and it was just like the perfect thing. I was just like, yes, got a job. Wasn't a good date. Didn't see him again, but at least I got like a job in a bar. It was quite good.
That's because Rachel lives in EastEnders. That's literally her life. Is just an episode of EastEnders. Yeah, don't worry about him. You can job in Marc pub. And now you live above it and you work below, and and your brother's been shot.
That's me. That's so my vibe, Marc. You've just nailed it. Absolutely nailed it.
This week, obviously, so we're talking about red flags this week, right? And we've had loads of people send us their red flags, and there's quite a lot of common ones that have crept up. And we've had, so as ever, had some kind of audio submissions. So I think we'll just get cracking and just have a wee listen to them. So the first one we've got here deals with basically a very common thing that comes up just in dating in general, which is the subject of star signs.
So a major warning sign of a fuckboy for me is having the star sign Gemini, just to be avoided at all costs in my experience.
So I think the question after that is, Paul, what's your star sign?
Aquarius.
Oh, you're fine then.
What
You're
are
not
you,
a
Rachel?
fuckboy. I'm a Piscean.
Right, I'm a Leo. So
okay. So all of the people who are into it will be like, right, that says a lot.
As a resident astrologist, Rachel, please tell us what that means.
I wouldn't say that I'm a resident astrologist because
you're only women here, so by default.
I think very selfishly, I only know about my star sign and the ones that I'm compatible with.
That's very Leo of you to be selfish, by the way.
Oh, I know, you're terrible. No, that is funny. I think it's actually a real common thing with women, because this whole red flag conversation is an interesting one, because I think that the whole red flag thing is kind of a joke. Do you know what I mean? It's that thing of being like, if anyone says anything, you can be like, red flag. And it could literally be the most ridiculous thing. Obviously, if someone's a Gemini, you're not going to not go out with them or not have a thing with them. But if they start to show those traits, you are like, classic Gemini. And I think, I didn't know if it was Gemini, but I thought that there was, Gemini's the whole two-faced, got kind of dual personality thing. So it does make sense that that would be the one that people would think, maybe that's a bit of a fuckboy vibe. But I thought Scorpio were the baddies. I think they're the little snippy ones. But I mean,
closing
I don't
the name
really
into it. Closing the name with the Scorpios, basically.
I know, maybe I've just made that up. Maybe I've been like, yeah, they're the snippy ones, the Scorpions.
So she's saying that the Geminis are fuckboys right now. Apart from anything else to do with star signs, I want to take umbrage with the concept of the fuckboy, right? Because listen, I'm not really clear as to what the fuckboy means exactly. And what is the difference between calling somebody a fuckboy and slut shaming, Rachel? What is the difference there? I don't understand.
What I like to say is that's what a fuckboy would say. I have a problem with that, actually.
We need to stop fuck shaming. That's what I'm trying to say.
A fuckboy is someone who is a bit of a shagger, a bit of a player, and it's their kind of characteristics of being a bit full of themselves and messing people about, right? So that's all that a fuckboy is. And I think it's fine to poke fun at people who are the bad guys. I don't know, what do you think, Paul?
Paul's
Paul's just done a little ear tuck automatically.
Sorry, I've come out with quite a hot take early on trying to defend fuckboys here. Don't feel like you need to get dragged in with me, Paul, honestly.
I think it's one of those arguments when you ever open it up or go to speak about it, then it sounds then instantly somebody will be like, "You're a fuckboy for that." Stay clear of it, don't say it at all.
But here's because you can't win it because you're either a fuck boy or you're a soft boy or you're some kind of boy. I don't know. Yeah, I mean, that's it's a spectrum, isn't it? And you're like, well, I'm not quite a fuck boy, but I'm certainly not a soft boy. So you need, like, as soon as you stop worrying about being one, you need to worry about being the other.
I feel like I should. So I read an article today purely for this episode because I was like, I bet you we chat about fuckboys when we talk about red flags, but like a fuckboy and a soft boy, like I looked up the difference, and I think that the kind of takeaway from it was that a fuckboy is someone who is like a bit more basic, maybe like a personal trainer, you know, quite into their looks, like maybe like, you know, that kind of, I don't know, that kind of side of it. And the definition of the soft boy, it was actually an interview with someone who had did the Beam Me Up soft boy account, and it was basically saying there's a spectrum of soft boy, and one side of the spectrum is someone having alternative interests that makes them feel superior to people, and the other end of it is the kind of malicious dark side of it, of being like thinking they're so special that people should have sex with them, basically, and then it kind of merges to turn into the soft boy. Because I was like thinking about the whole soft boy thing and thinking that I talk about soft boys all the time. That's because I'm not attracted to fuck boys, but I'm accidentally attracted to soft boys. So it's that thing of being like really on high alert for them.
I've seen you fall hook, line, and sinker for you know, so many soft boys over the years, Rachel. So I've seen it firsthand.
I know you have, and you know
you have been beamed up.
I've been beamed up soft boy. It's so funny because I was thinking about a soft boy that I was hook, line, and sinkered in with, and it turned out that he just wanted to have us as fuck buddies, but I didn't realize because he was so deep and so like kind and nice and really, so I was thinking, oh my god, this might progress into something. And then when he kind of was like, oh, should we just be fuck buddies, then I was like, oh no, I don't want that. And then he gave me essays and essays, basically like poetry of reasons why our connection wasn't special enough and reasons why that there was a misunderstanding, and really apologizing, being like, I'm so sorry if I've upset you, but just, you know, you want to be, I'm older than you, and you want to be with someone who makes your heart beat fast. You want to be with someone who it feels electric, it feels this, it feels that. And I'm just like, and I was like, you don't need to write an essay and give me a proper proper essay on how not special I am to you. Like, I get it. You don't really need to like delve into it. And I feel like that's prime soft boy.
It's like, I just feel like they're two like opposing tactics for the same thing, right? Because it's like, you've spoken about this, because effectively, what is the dichotomy of the soft boy and the fuck boy, right? It effectively is like kind of the nice guy and the bad boy or whatever, isn't it? So it's like you can either like, you know, kind of love bomb them, like, oh, you're, you know, a princess and all that sort of stuff, or you can be like just be an arsehole basically and just like try and like kind of kid on that you know you don't care about them, so is that like treat them mean, keep them keen kind of thing. So it's basically this, it's the eternal struggle of those two sort of sides of the coin, basically, that are effectively just different ways of doing the same thing.
Yeah, but ultimately they're both being bad along with it, so just be nice and you'll be neither.
I suppose so.
Sorted.
I did go to art school, so there was like so many soft boys. That's the fucking vibe of that. There's like a ton of guys that are kind of like, because they don't like football or they didn't really fit into that kind of thing, it's like they're better than these kind of people. There's a lot of people that have this idea that's kind of like, because I think there are people that didn't maybe fit into the mainstream when they were younger, which is fine and it's whatever, but there's a lot of people that want to get some kind of power out of somewhere else, like about like feel powerful in some other situation, and then they kind of become this thing where it's like, I'm not a football lad, I'm not a lad, so therefore I'm better and I'm good. But then a lot of them are just fucking shitheads and they're like just as bad or worse even. They're just a more
Yeah.
insidious version kind of thing. But you get a lot of those like total soft boys in art school or university kind of fucking environments. But
Definitely, because there's a lot of folk that are quite, can be quite geeky in school and all that, and then they become successful in whatever field it's in, and they grow up and they become the bullies. Like, they get their revenge by becoming the kind of, because they've all of a sudden got status after never having it when they were younger. It's like they overcompensate, and like, as you say, kind of like just what you're describing, Paul. So like, I think that's so true, and because you see that in a lot of walks of life, I would say, and I'm quite familiar with that. I would like to actually bring up as well, because obviously I'm saying, like, I'm kind of saying about fuck boys and all that, and how sometimes it's I'm saying that sometimes it's a broad brush to stroke people with, but we obviously do know
He's
what a
worried,
fuck boy is.
He's worried.
No.
He's just double checking.
There are certain fuckboys, and there's even people who kind of market themselves as fuckboys, in particular on things like TikTok and all that now. And Paul, you have very successfully, I would say, parodied these type of guys. That there's a particular few that I think you're dealing with, the sort of guys, and they're always kind of posing and doing these videos and pictures and all that. And you do some pretty funny videos and pictures and all that yourself, where you kind of basically mimic them. But what I like about it is that you do it in a way that's you're kind of doing the touch in the face and all the posing, and as if you're one of these guys, and it's so funny because you're taking the piss at them. But also, people probably, Paul, you're a good looking guy. People might fancy you off the back of it as well. So you're kind of having your cake and eating it. That thing.
You've sussed it out. Nah. I do think it's so funny, man. It's a mad thing with TikTok and stuff like that. All those guys that do the things where they're doing the whole pure this kind of stuff, stuff, and the raised eyebrows and looking away, and all this,
rubbing their hands and stuff.
This stuff it's so funny. I love it. I don't know. It's funny just to do it as well and just have such a laugh with it, because some people are taking it so seriously doing that.
But what type of people do that? Because I've seen those videos. Is it just like a youth thing? Is it just young guys thinking that that's like normal to do? Do you think it's like Americans? Is it like, maybe I shouldn't say that just Americans, but do you know what I mean? Is it that?
There's Scottish guys. There's Scottish guys that do it.
Oh, really?
Aye.
There's a guy I used to work with him. He's a nice guy. He's a nice enough guy, but it's so funny because I used to always see him doing this stuff, and it was like walking around, and then every time I just don't think he'd done any work, to be honest. It wasn't Marc, by the way. I'm confirmed it wasn't Marc. We did work together, but it wasn't Marc.
Imagine that would be the brilliant if you were like, and it was Marc.
Just walking about Asda.
He'd be like speaking to girls and stuff, and you'd see him, and he'd be like leaning across counters and kind of like posing and being like doing all this stuff, and it was like so obvious he was doing all this, and a lot of girls just loved it. Like, there was a lot of girls that were just really into it and found it really, like, you'd see him chatting to all these girls and you'd be like, he works it somehow. But
it's confidence, isn't it? Like, that's really cringy, but I suppose if you own it, then it's like recognizing the confidence and being like, well, maybe that is sexy in itself.
I think it's embarrassing seeing from the outside looking in, but I think in that environment, it's that kind of way where when you're younger and you're kind of caught in one of those environments, and then later on when you're older, you're like, oh my God, that's so embarrassing kind of thing. But I think when you see it from the outside looking in, you're like, this is ridiculous, this is so funny. But
and that kind of sums up TikTok, actually, doesn't it? Because like TikTok, in that environment of that app, all that stuff is normal because that's what every video is. But if you see any of these TikToks posted on even Twitter, or even if you've seen somebody actually filming one outside in real life, you just like, oh my God, what the fuck is this shit? Do you know what I mean? But in the context of it, it kind of is just like everything else.
I think it's really hard for guys to take a selfie or to get a nice picture of them, because so much of the time there's that element of cringe, and I think so many guys don't know how to take a picture. And I've seen so many people, and I'm gonna say I think it's older guys, so you two are okay, but it's older guys and they all take it from below their chin, and it's like really weird. They're all taking it as like they look like little grumpy dogs, like they're all just like, and I'm like, just literally take it from like eye level, because no one is looking at you from that angle. It's really unflattering. It's like, and they're always like being really bitter. They're always like, no psychos, my wife left me and just looking for a nice, clean girl. It's like, oh, this is such a bad look, you don't even know.
You need to teach your uncles about angles. That's what you need to do. Anyway, I think I took us off track a wee bit there, but to go back to star signs, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, right, see, to be honest, for me, see if somebody like seems like they are quite legitimately into star signs, that in itself is a bit of a red flag for me, I would
I
say.
knew he was going to say that. How do you feel about star signs, Paul?
I think they're fun. I like. I quite like them. Like, I like when people start telling you stuff about them, and like, it's a funny conversation. Like, it's always an interesting conversation to have somebody telling you about it. But I don't know how seriously I take it particularly. But aye.
Yeah, I'm the same. Like, I like the idea of it, and I like just kind of chatting about general star signs. I mean, I wouldn't say, if I had bad compatibility with someone that I'd be like, well, I should just leave it because our signs are incompatible. But like, I do kind of think that it's fun. Like, it is fun, and it is that thing of just being like, well, like, I think it's interesting looking at traits, and it's interesting kind of working out who you are as a person. So like, if you were to be like, oh, well, were you an Aquarius?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're like, oh, well, I'm an Aquarius, so, classic me, I think this, I'd be like, oh, very interesting. So you think that about yourself?
I've got it in front of me here. So Aquarius traits: strengths, progressive, original, independent, and humanitarian. All things that I would say about you, Paul. Weaknesses: weaknesses, runs from emotional expression, temperamental, uncompromising, and aloof.
Oh, aloof.
There you go.
That is
What do you
quite a
feel about that?
sexy trait, Paul.
That was one of the negatives, I thought.
I know, but as a woman, I'm like, aloof is attractive. Unfortunately, sometimes you're like, oh, what? That's actually a red flag if someone's being too aloof. But it kind of reels you in, and you're like, I'm seeing this red flag, and I am ignoring it completely.
What did you say you were, Rachel?
Pisces.
Pisces, right, here we go. So let's see. We'll let the listeners decide if this sums up Rachel,
no.
right? So Pisces strengths: compassionate, artistic, intuitive, gentle, wise, and musical.
I am
so I'd
musical.
say a mixed bag of hits and misses there. And weaknesses: fearful, overly trusting, sad. Just I like it. That's just a trait of just the human emotion of being sad is
Pisceans
a trait
do cry. They're very sensitive people, Pisceans.
I would say this is bang on, by the way. Desire to escape reality. Yep.
What's that story that you always think I try and avoid all my problems?
Yeah, that is basically it. And also says, can be a victim or a martyr. Jesus fucking Christ, that one's a bit heavy. But I would say, in terms of desire to escape reality, right, and I'll get to mine actually before we go on to this. So I'm a Leo, right, and which I think we've said before, I think I do have some of the kind of, I do fit the bill. So the Leo strengths are creative, passionate, generous, warm-hearted, cheerful, and humorous. Yep, me all over right there.
Warm-hearted, Mark.
I am. Listen. Weaknesses: arrogant, stubborn, self-centered, lazy, and inflexible. So I think we can agree a lot of shite, isn't it? I feel like star signs, like, it's one of those things that a lot of people can get quite into, and it's see that whole thing, desire to escape reality that came up for years, Rachel. I think a lot of people actually do that way. Maybe not necessarily star signs, but other things like, see if people are kind of like too into like Harry Potter, and it's like, oh,
I feel attacked.
Hufflepuff and I'm a
Can
Gryffindor and all that sort of stuff. Or, people that are into whatever it could be, like Star Wars, or do you know what I mean? Like any of these kind of things, like Lord of the Rings or Disney or something like that. I think sometimes these ways are ways of dealing with reality and kind of or escape reality and sort of signifying who's good and who's bad and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, I think particularly with Disney, like, I would say if someone was too into Disney, that's a red flag. I don't know what you think, Paul. I think if you're too into Disney, I'm like, especially, when people are like, I just, like, my whole world revolves around wanting to go to Disneyland. I want to be proposed to at Disneyland. I watch Disney every week. I'm like, maybe there's some trauma in this person's life that they just needed the comfort of something really, really gentle, but big red flag, Disney.
I think anything that's that kind of stuff's a bit too like, I don't know, like normie almost. Like there's some people, you know what I mean? Like there's some people
Aye.
that are just really, really like that you're just like, oh, I can't spend too much time with them. Like they're nice enough people, but sometimes you end up like, I don't know, like just talking to somebody like that and you're like, no, Disney
Yeah.
stuff. Aye.
I
Yeah,
remember
totally
being
agree.
in somebody's house and like their entire living room was, and they're like in their 30s, right? So like a young couple, and the entire living room was all Lord of the Rings, and they had like Lord of the Rings quotes on their pillows and all this Game of Thrones shit and all that, and you're just kind of like, something about it just seemed quite. It's like people are trying to like hold on to their youth or something, right? And it's not always a bad thing, but it's when it's those pure things that are like so mainstream. Like it's, if it's like a wee niche thing or something, that's cool. But like, I mean, it's like literally like Disney or, you know, as I say, Harry Potter or something like that. It's literally the most mainstream thing ever. It's kind of, to me, that's, I think, so I think we're on agreement that that's a bit of a red flag. Apologies to any listeners who are fucking into their Disney and all that shit, but sort your fucking life out, I would say.
No, cause sometimes I feel bad because I'm always, if someone has like Eeyore bedspreads or Winnie the Pooh pajamas, I'm always like, oh. But you know, I will watch a
How many
Disney
guys
film.
have you went back to and they've had fucking ER bedspread?
I'm talking about women actually. Is that bad? I just didn't even include that. I've never come across a guy who's been like, my passion is Disney, but maybe that's because they've not told me.
See, if you did and you went back and the guy had that, would you let it slide, do you think? Or would that be enough to be like, this night is over?
My official answer I would say my night is over, but I think from my chat on the podcast, I've let a lot of things slide. So I'll be like looking at the duvet, like, just don't look at it, Rachel, it's fine.
I not like the thing though about with red flags where it's like everyone always lets these things slide for so long. Like so many people you'll hang out with them or whatever or whatever, you'll be seeing them for a while and then like months later when you realise that it is a big problem and it isn't working or whatever, then you'll be like, oh my god, here's all the things that were wrong with them. They had Disney fucking bed sheets, you know? Shit like that. Like,
Apparently we all see these straight away, but our brain is choosing not to see it. And it is that thing of like any problem or any reason that you break up at any point in a relationship, the problem is always there. It's not like it's just a new thing. It's that the way that they behave has always been underneath, but you've got this kind of honeymoon period of real like rose tinted glasses.
Aye, everything's fine, and then you break up, and then all of a sudden, everything that you were like, oh, it's cute or whatever, and then it's like, oh no, actually, that was a bit fucked up, wasn't it?
But do you feel, Paul, like quite aware of who you are? This is maybe a very deep question, but do you know what I mean?
Fucking
Like,
hell.
no, but what
Are
I mean
you
is
are
like
you getting a job as a fucking psychic or something like that?
Mystic Rach. No, but do you know what I mean? Like, see if you go on a date, like, are you quite like, I know who I am and I know what I'm looking for? Like, or are you a bit more easy, like, whatever happens, happens?
I think a bit of both. When I was younger, I didn't really know, I suppose, who I was or anything a bit. But then after like going away and doing stuff, and I felt like I kind of became a different person in the last few years. And then, I think I go into things, but nowadays I think I do also go into things expecting however it goes, kind of thing. You know, fine with whatever happens, really. But it's also kind of part of knowing or feeling confident who you are, really.
It's nice to be at this age of just being a bit more like, I know who I am and I know what I want. And I think that comes back to red flags of being like, it's the experience of being like, I've gone down that road before, and yeah, we might ignore them, but at the same time just being a bit kind of like, well, this didn't work out well before, so maybe I should avoid this person. But I do think ultimately the joke is that I think often women are like, look at those 7 red flags, I want to make a scarf out of it, like let's see what happens this time, you know.
I think I'm like, though, I was saying to my pals about this, I think I'm like because you said about red flags, and I was like, this is kind of funny because I do feel like I feel like I'm the male equivalent of the girls that, see, like on Twitter when girls post things like, oh, he's a drug dealer, he ignores your texts, and like, he doesn't want to talk to you, and like this kind of stuff. And it's like, and then it's like love heart eyes, and they're totally like, saying essentially like they pick the wrong guys. I feel like I do that same thing, but with lasses, I feel like I find a certain type of lassie that's, I don't know, just a bit faffy or a bit like in a certain way, and then I'm like, I just look straight past the red flags. I feel like I just find that thing, but
You love a red flag, is what you're
I feel like I
saying.
love a red flag, yeah.
So the next submission we've got here is kind of in the sort of, probably in the fuckboy ballpark a wee bit again, about something that guys, well, it's not just guys actually. I think it's something that to look out for in terms of more when you're in a relationship with someone. I think this next submission is something that is definitely a red flag that comes up from time to time.
For me, a big red flag would actually be if someone is unable to let you meet their friends or their family. I should probably explain a little bit about that, just because I don't mean if it's, something you've been dating for a little bit. I was in a long distance relationship for 8 months, and I'm from the US. He was from Scotland. So I went out to go see him, and he immediately would not let me meet any of his friends, any of his family. Every time I had mentioned it, there was some sort of an excuse. And it ended up being that obviously he was being very shady and he was talking to multiple girls. I honestly don't know how he had the time. I'm a little bit impressed, but yeah, for me, I would just say make sure they're not trying to shut you out from the most important people in their life, because there's probably a reason for that.
Just once more to clarify, that was not about me either. Just in case anyone's worried.
He was Scottish, he was a comedian, he
He
was always
definitely
in a
wasn't doing
shed.
that.
No, do you know, it's that thing of like, I think you learn a lot of lessons, and it sounds like it's one of those things where I'll have chats with friends and they'll be like, yeah, like he's not got social media, and yeah, he's really busy actually, so we only meet one-on-one. And it's all these little things that you're thinking, there is definitely, that is a red flag. There's something going on there that they're hiding you.
There's an old Chris Rock bit, and he said, like, if you've been dating a man for 4 months and you haven't met any of his friends, then you're not his girlfriend, sort of thing. Like, and I guess, I suppose it's sort of similar nowadays to, like, if you've been going out for a certain period of time and, you don't put them on your Instagram grid or, whatever. It's no Facebook official was the kind of thing before that. Like, I think it's one of those things where, like, if by a certain point, if you've not met their pals or, it's no been kind of declared official, you start going, what's the problem? And turns out, I guess, a lot of these guys, they're married and they've got kids and all this. Whatever.
I'm always quite blown away when those things happen. Like with there's always those guys that are like, somebody finds out that they've been like going out with somebody who's married or has like several other people they're seeing at the one time or whatever, and it's the way that she said there as well, like she's impressed that he had the time. There's always these people that you're just like, where were they finding the time? How did they manage to hide that? As well as, like, you must have a wee bit of an inkling, because it's kind of like, where's their social media? Where's their photos or stuff? And these people are usually not even hiding it that well. Like, there's something that's quite obvious about it, but it's quite I don't know, like, I'm quite shocked when you find those people that have been like seeing multiple people or cheating or whatever, like outside their relationship with someone, and just keeping it in the low for so long. Because you kind of see these stories on Twitter where it's like they find out that somebody they were going out with has had another girlfriend for like a year, and you're like, what the? How did that go under the radar?
Yeah, totally.
How does that possibly happen?
Yeah, I actually had, this just reminded me, I had a thing.
You're going to be a guy for 3 years and turns out he was married.
He was always around at his woman's house.
I've just remembered there that actually
there was little kids that used to follow him about to school and stuff. It was weird. But I went on a date with this guy who was a performer, and went on one date with him and it was all fine, but I think I was upset about another guy, so I wasn't like as into it because I needed time to get over the other guy. So it was actually quite good timing, because I had 3 friends message me after the date saying that he was like famous for having lots and lots of girlfriends, and it was like to the point where I think that he maybe had like 3 girlfriends over 6 years. So he was going out with them all at the same time. So I went on the date with him, and then he texted me like, oh, do you want to go on a second date? But I'd just been told all this stuff, and I was like, oh, no, actually, I've heard some weird stuff about you, and I just want to leave it. And don't you think, right? Say if someone went on a date with you and then you were like, do you want to go on a second date? And you were like, no, I've heard weird shit. Don't you think you'd be like, what have you heard? Like, that's really weird. Like, the normal response would just be like, oh, this is confusing. What's going on? His reply was, oh, okay, no worries. We'll just leave it. I won't ask any questions. I was like, oh, that's confirmation of a guilty person. But then the following week, I had a friend who I was telling this to, and she was like, what's his full name? And I said his full name. And then she was like, oh my God, my best friend was going out with him literally for a couple of months and went to his show, and she went to the toilet, and she went to the toilet and started chatting to this girl. And she was like, oh, like that's my boyfriend whose show it is. And the girl was like, no, that's my boyfriend whose show it is. And this was a week before I'd been on the date with him. So he was basically going out with everyone. And I was like, how did he get away with it? But like, I wouldn't have guessed unless people had told me.
That, like, obviously that's a weird one, right? But I was meeting this lassie recently, and well, a while back, it would have been probably before COVID or whatever. But she, like, the second time I met her, she was like, are you like in a relationship? And I was like, no. And then she was like, oh, because one of my friends has told me that you're going out with some girl she knows. And I was like, and then she told me the girl, and I'd never met this lassie. I don't know the lassie at all. And I've spoke to her literally on social media just because she's like sent me messages, and I've been like, okay, haha, yeah, lol, okay. But I was a bit like really weirded out by it, because I was a bit like, I don't really want to confront this person and say, what's the deal? Because it's a bit of a big thing, but also I'm a bit like, those kind of things go around, and I don't know how many people would think that I'm going out with this person just because they've been telling people this. And I'm like, I've never met the person and I've never met them in person. I've spoke to them very briefly, just replying to things, and I'm like, that's really weird. So that's kind of like the opposite of that situation, but in a different way. But
I've had a kind of combination of both of those stories, right? Because
of course you have, Marc.
I've had like loads. I've had loads of girls meet up in the toilets at one of my gigs, and they've all said that they're my girlfriend, but I've never met any of them. So it's, it was all just a big misunderstanding. I'm like, none of you are going to be me. Talking of social media, though, that does kind of bring us nicely to our next submission. This next submission is kind of about social media and influencers and putting all your stuff up online, and what the consequences are for a relationship, and whether or not that is a red flag, or at least something that you need to take into account.
Okay, so a red flag for me would be having too many followers on Instagram and kind of being obsessed with the whole social media aspect, in the sense that, like, you don't want your relationship to be out there too much. And if they really care about their followers and their likes and their comments, etc., I think it kind of puts you off a little bit, because it looks like they're just kind of seeking validation from others, and she's going to put everything you do with her on her socials.
I guess that's kind of the opposite of what we were talking about in the last one. So the last one was about somebody like that doesn't get introduced to their pals or anything like that, whereas this one's like, if you're basically the public girlfriend or boyfriend of someone who's quite prominent in social media, at least maybe just posts everything that they do on Instagram or whatever, then you've got a kind of role to play. Probably most of the time it's just fucking taking the pictures or whatever. But then it's like, I don't know, it's quite it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because you would need to take that into consideration. Like if you know somebody that kind of posts a lot of their stuff online, and then you were to get in a relationship with them. Like you need to take that into consideration. Fuck, I'm now going to become a fucking public figure. It may only be 300 people or whatever, or it could be more, but I suppose it's something that you need to take into account.
I guess a fine balance between the two. I mean, there is some people that try and hide their relationships or whatever online. They don't post about their partner, but then they try and act as if it's like, oh no, this is my thing, and that's fine or whatever. But then there's also people that are maybe a bit too like focused on their social media image or whatever, and it's like, but then again, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be somebody that has massive amounts of followers or whatever, you know, or whatever. It's like some people are just like, they only want to show one part of the relationship or whatever, which is, or put everything out there, the thing, but it's a different thing from what their actual relationship is. So I think it is like between those 2 points or whatever. It's like a fine balance between them.
It's that thing of actually, this person is maybe presuming that if they're quite a public person, that that a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever is going to be added onto that as being like a showcase. And I think maybe there is elements of that. I think especially if people are making money off of social media, then, you know, I think it makes sense that would be maybe a concern. But I do think there's so many ways around that. Do you know what I mean? Like there's so many people that like, yes, things are for the gram or whatever, but see, I think if you like and respect someone, you could just have a conversation and be like, listen, I don't really want to be featured in all this. I would say it's probably quite time consuming. I've got like, you know, friends who are quite into Instagram and like, well, that kind of stuff of being like, it does take a lot of their time, but maybe they're making money from it and all that kind of stuff. So I do understand why maybe they would consider why it would impact the relationship, but I don't think it's like, I don't think it's a red flag. But maybe that's because, I mean, I don't really know. I have very few followers, so I don't feel like I can really like chat about the kind of implications of if someone has a lot, you know.
You see, like, people tweeting and stuff sometimes going like, oh, I just posted that I got engaged and I lost 800 followers or whatever. Like, and there is a bit of that. And you kind of like, I mean, to be fair, like, if you're kind of, especially like on Instagram and stuff, if you're posting all these sexy pictures of yourself and like, you know, whether you're a guy or a woman or whatever, but, you know, and then, you know, you post your relationship, a lot of people are probably following you because they fancy you, or, you know, they like seeing your pictures. And then, you know, I suppose if you put up that you're engaged, it's like the dream's over. Do you know what I mean? Like,
it's like boy bands,
you know,
isn't it? Boy bands
aye.
is like, you're not gay. Just pretend that you like women, so all these people fancy
Yeah.
you, you know?
I know, and as a consideration, I suppose, because like even, I mean, I've no like an amazing amount of followers in it, but it's like, you know, you sort of go, well, you know, do you post that stuff? Because it's weird. Because for me, anyway, I would say, because I've got like, for me primarily, when I think of Instagram, I just think it's like my mates, not that follow me, but I have got some people that follow me for kind of stand up and all that sort of stuff, and so that you do sort of sometimes second guess, like, and Paul, I'm sure you've had this as well, like, well, you sort of go, well, am I putting this out there? You're putting it out there to a lot of people that you don't actually know, I suppose. But then at the same time, Rachel, like you're saying, it's like, it's not as if I'm exactly in fucking Take That or something. Do you know what I mean? I can just kind of like post up what, you know, is happening. What do you think, Paul? Like, because you obviously, because you got a significant following on Twitter and things like that. And like, do you ever need to kind of like second guess what you posted, but or sort of thinking about what you post about your personal life and things like that?
A wee bit. Well, I don't really. I think Twitter's a bit more like a character thing for me. Just like I like to do stupid stuff on it and not particularly take it seriously. And then
Aye.
obviously, but I think the problem is that people assume that that's who you are straight off through it. But then occasionally, I think the thing that bothers me a lot with Twitter sometimes is occasionally I'm genuinely asking for something. Like I'm kind of like, oh, where's a place I can eat in Glasgow, or even something just more personal kind of thing, something that I'm just asking about something, and then all I'll get is like stupid replies. People give me some stupid messages of people being like, oh, like fucking, I don't know, like, I think I asked about food the other day, places to eat, and people were just sending me tons of stupid places and stupid things and that stuff to go to admin or something. I'm like, just asking a simple question, like the joke kind of ends, yeah, this is. But then when you ask something slightly more personal, then people still continue on and act as if you're like a character constantly. So it's like the thing that Twitter is for me is just not the same as like what my real life is. So I'd hate for anyone to look at my Twitter and think that that's what my life is, kind of thing. And I think people have to get that that's a joke.
But obviously, it's like a comedic character with Twitter, with your Twitter. But I think all social media, we're presenting a character of ourselves, you know, and that's what, like, I went on a date the other day and this person had listened to the podcast. And then I was thinking, are they going to expect me to act in a certain way or say a certain thing, or because they've listened to me talk so much? And it was that kind of thing. I was like, are they going to be disappointed with like the real me, or like, do you know what I mean? Not having like that thought of being like, because obviously we're just putting our best bits out there, you know?
See, at the end of the day, just did they try and get you to go, and you can email us at debatingdatingpod@gmail.com.
If you'd like
Give
to
us
slide
5
into our
stars on
DMs.
iTunes. I guess there's always been celebrity couples that, like, you know, Posh and Bex and all that back in the OK magazine days. And
Are
it's
we
like,
saying that we are 3 celebs here?
no, what I'm saying is,
Honestly, the fame has hit me so hard, Paul. Like, see,
No.
since we've been getting all these listeners.
no, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that obviously celebrity couples have always been a thing, but and now with Instagram and all that, so like your modern ones is like, well, no, even Alfie and Zoella, because they've been out for ages. But let's say Molly May and Tommy Fury, right? They're like the kind of modern, like, it's like an Instagram couple. They met on Love Island and all that sort of stuff, and it's like you always wonder like how much of that is real and how much it is just for, you know, it's just for the gram. It used to be for the magazines, and it's for the gram. And it's like you do wonder what the reality is behind those relationships that are so public that you're like, that can't be as good in real life, surely, you know?
Yeah.
It is quite scary, those ones, because I think if you're in one of those relationships, like that's your career as well. So that's what I always think with Love Island. When people finish, I'm like, when they go off Love Island, they know that they can make tons and tons of money if they just stay in this relationship. So that's kind of like not really like a hostage situation, but almost it's like a weird thing where it's like if you break up, then you're probably not going to make as much money. But if you stay in this relationship, then you're going to probably be minted within the next like 2-3 years and do tons of events and maybe get a TV show or something or sponsors out of it. So those things keep me out with Love Island.
It's like monetizing couple culture.
Mm-hmm.
It's so strange. And it's also like you get pulled into it. Like I've seen lots of like pictures on Instagram of like people proposing in Bali, and it's really beautiful. And you're like, oh, that's really nice. And then I'm thinking, but think about like behind that picture or whatever, like it is embarrassing that everything is so fake. And I think like you kind of said that earlier of like a lot of the people who post, well, maybe I'm putting words in your mouth, but a lot of people who post a lot and is that kind of thing of being like, this is my boyfriend, this is us doing this date thing, this is this. Like, I mean, I think that a lot of that is like, if you're just happy, you're just existing. I find that whenever I write a diary, it's when I'm very sad. My classic Piscean traits. When I'm very sad, I'll write in my diary because I'm so sad and I've got like less going on, and I'm like, I'm writing a diary and I think this is bad and I'm sad about this. If I'm happy, I don't write in a diary because I'm off doing fun things. And I think it's a similar thing with couples of being like, see, if you're really enjoying each other's company, you're not posing for all these pictures, you're not really making it all go straight online for other people to look and you know, feel validated by other people's opinion that you're in a relationship. And I think I always see when people are doing too much couple pictures, I'm thinking, I wonder how happy that is like behind closed doors.
Yeah.
Maybe that's
it's almost like a sort of kind of, I don't know what you'd call that kind of graph, but it's like, you know, the more they post online, the worse the relationship is, and the less they post online, the better it is because they don't need it. But that's obviously not always true, you know what I mean? Like, I think nowadays it's just become so common to just sort of share so much of your life on social media that actually does, I don't think it necessarily means that, you know, you're overcompensating for a bad relationship if you're posting all the time. I think it's just kind of normal part of everybody sort of documents entire lives now. But I definitely think that there is something to that still, that there's people who protest too much a wee bit, and then you're like, what the fuck's really going on here?
Totally. Although it's been so long since I've been in a relationship that I'm probably chatting shit. I'm like, everyone's unhappy apart from me. Everyone's miserable.
I know for a fact, Rachel, next time you're in a relationship, you'll be fucking posting every day. This guy will not get a fucking minute's peace. His entire 24 hours will be getting documented, you know what I mean? He looks so cute when he's sleeping. He's so cute when he's sleeping.
It'll just be literally my entire story for the day of just my life in the day of just what they're doing. Have I mentioned that I have a boyfriend?
So sad that he has to go to work for 8 hours, like when a kid, when her dad goes for work in the morning up at the window, like, don't leave me. Speaking of parents, actually, a good segue
Oh,
here.
beautiful segue.
Our next submission is a red flag that is about guys that do this, but I think it applies to everybody to a certain respect. So we'll have a listen to this.
Okay, so my dating red flag is, and this is like a definite, when men specifically are fucking obsessed with their mums. I'm talking, oh, my mum does that. Oh, my mum likes that. I mean, it's nice that you like your mum, but why do you have some sort of Oedipus complex thing going on? You know, it'll be like, oh, it's not as good as when my mum does it.
I hope the fuck that's not talking about in the bedroom, to be honest.
Like talking about a meal, or, oh, it creeps me right out, because you know that the mum's going to be obsessive and crazy, and you're going to have to deal with that forever. So I just let it go. As soon as the signals go for I'm in love with my mum, I'm off.
I like that she knows this now, and this has obviously come from very specific experience. What do you two think about the whole like mum thing?
I mean, I don't know. I think it's a guy's way. Like, you'd see it more as a, you know, as a woman. If you're going to be guys, like, you'd see how, you know, it kind of corresponds to their relationship to women. I don't know. It's hard to say, I think, but I think it's probably true. Like, if, you know, if a woman's got daddy issues or issues with her mum or whatever, I think everybody's got issues with their parents. Do you know what I mean? So that obviously is kind of reflective. And I suppose the thing with a relationship as well that I suppose you don't take into account when you start dating somebody or whatever is, like, if you get in a relationship with somebody, you're kind of like taking on board their family as well, aren't you?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like, you know, it was like, what was it, Jean-Paul Sartre said, hell is other people. Well, sometimes it feels like hell is other people's fucking families, because you're like, oh, what have I got myself in here?
You can't choose your family, but you can choose your partner's family. So think about that.
Yeah.
You get that a lot. Fucking, I felt like at uni there was a ton of people like that, where it was like boys that moved out, and it was their first time moving out, and they were living in these flats, and they just didn't know how to take care of themselves. They didn't know how to do anything, and it was as if I think their mum done everything for them. So there was people I knew that were like bringing all their washing back home to their mum, like they were just not doing it themselves and shit like that, like, and bringing it back home and getting their mum to do it back in like Glasgow. So they were coming from Dundee to Glasgow, getting it washed and bringing their clean clothes back. And you were like, some people are just, I think the thing is, I don't know, like their parents have affected their life like that, and maybe their mum kind of wants to keep them as they are, like, I don't know how to say it, like, keep them unable to do those things so that they have a purpose still in their life. And then there's a lot of guys as well that find a girlfriend who fits that role sometimes for them. And there's relationships that work like that, to be honest. I feel bad saying it, but like, there is relationships where there's like a guy who is looking for that, and then girls that do really fill that role for them, or I don't know, like the other way around, really, you know, which is, I don't know, it's a weird thing to say, but you do notice these people who are like, that guy was just looking for a mum.
His mum.
Mate, 100%, right? And there's
a son.
there's people who have basically just replaced their mom with a girlfriend, right? And have had no gap in their life and where they've been independent. So you literally go, right, see, I've got mates, right? And it's like, I've literally went for us being, you know, 16 or whatever, and be like, right, oh, can we go on this holiday? Right, oh, I need to phone my mom and find out, to, you know, sitting in the pub at 30 and being like, all right, are we going on this holiday? I need to phone the missus. And literally, the only thing that's changed is the person that they need to ask permission for. At no point have they been an autonomous individual. They just went straight from mum to girlfriend and that, or to wife or whatever, and that's it. And like, I think so much is just kind of what you're describing.
Yeah, I agree with this submission in the sense of, you do kind of see people who, like, you know, some people really need that. They need someone who's very like their mum, and usually what they're thinking of is someone who's quite homely, does a lot of chores, you know, is that kind of domestic goddess, like, you know, pretty traditional gender roles. And I mean, I'm a shit cook, so I can't offer that to anyone. So I'm always just like,
red flag right now, guys.
But I also am a bit kind of like, I don't want to like, I want it to be a partnership. I don't want to have to do your washing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, I want it to be, I don't want to be your mum. But I do think it's interesting as well with the whole, I look at it more on the mum than the guy, because, you know, I think that there's a real, this is generalization, but there's a real thing with some mums, just completely, it's their little prince. They idolize their little boy. They let them away with murder. There's a real kind of like, love them so much, too much, to the extent that they like behave badly, but they can't see it. And I've been with a lot of guys actually who have maybe like single parent mums, and maybe they're an only child or all that kind of stuff. So you can see how it kind of adds to being like, of course, that's their only family and there's such a strong connection. But then you worry of like, is the mum going to hate me? And I did have an ex-boyfriend whose mum hated me, and I was so upset about it, because I was like, I am nice and I am not going to be bad to your son. So I took it so personally, but I think actually it just came from that the mum was, that they had this really close bond, and that I was kind of the other woman in the relationship. And I think that's quite common.
Yeah, that's I suppose there must be a kind of weird rivalry in that sense sometimes between like a girlfriend and a mum, and it's like, it's, you know, it's similar but different for guys. I think like when you go over to, you know, your girlfriend's house for the first time, and it's like the dad's like, "What's your intention, son?" Which I have genuinely had that experience before. Like when I was younger, somebody said that to me, and I was just like, "What do you expect me to say here?" Like, I'm going to shag her and then fuck off. No, I'm kidding. No, but what did he expect? Like, because it's sort of a weird thing. Like, what's your intention? So I was like, what are you actually meant to say to that? Well, I plan on, you know, working very hard and then, you know, getting a mortgage and doing the right thing by you. You know, like, what the fuck do you say?
I think what it comes down to with red flags is it's emotionally unavailable men is ultimately what it is. You can take it down the more dangerous route, but I actually think it's people who, you know, will break your heart are the red flags. And it's guys who, you know, are quite openly only looking for fun, and which I find is a really weird sentence. You know, when people are like, I'm just looking for fun, as if like, if you want to date and it to turn into a relationship, that it just has to be like miserable. Like, it's just that thing being like, that it doesn't, it's like real connotations of being like, yeah, fun only, please. And I was like, well, you can have, anyway.
Although people do know what that means based on that, so, you know, there's probably an element of truth to that. Something like that.
I think this guy.
I'm looking for something serious. I'm not looking for fun.
But that's what I mean.
Fun is of no interest to me. If you're, you know, it's serious and somber or nothing for me.
Pure funeral attire.
Oh, you know, we've just met. It's still the fun period. No, serious from the get-go.
Poker face. But yeah, I think it's that emotionally unavailable person who's gonna like treat you badly. And this guy was like, he was so handsome and aloof and clearly like a bit of a bad boy that I was like, I'm just gonna allow myself to go down that road. And it obviously ended really badly, and he was very like emotionally distant and was like very much like wouldn't even. He kept on referring to sex as back tickles.
Oh my.
So he used to be like, oh, I love getting my back tickled. You should come round to my flat in the south side and tickle my back. And
I think that in itself is the biggest red flag we've heard so far. Somebody's describing sex as back tickles is fucking.
I think he was talking about back tickles, as in like someone like running their finger over his back. But I mean, obviously the bigger picture is wanting to shag, right?
Yeah, I mean, it'd be a bigger surprise if he went round and he's like, "Hey, I thought this was just back tickles."
Back tickles only, please. Keep your hands to yourself, like batting them away. I'm like, I'm just looking for sex.
I'm just looking for something serious here, some back tickles. Otherwise, it start getting too fun. All right. Paul, have you got any specifics that come to mind in terms of red flags?
I think I tweeted a thing about it as well when I said a thing about saying what was it again? I said the biggest red flag is when somebody's not attracted to you, right? Just like, and it technically should be the case, but then again, there's so many times where that's like, I think it's your own idea of what you're attracted to is, when it's not quite actually, doesn't actually match up with your own self or whatever. So
It's like this type thing, isn't it? Like, you know, we kind of tell ourselves that we have a type, and then it's that thing of being like, where is that coming from? Like, do you know what I mean? Because like, do you have an idea in your head of like your type, or is it, what's your type?
well, that's the thing. Even I'm saying there's like, I feel like I have an idea of my type, and then it's always meet somebody that's like, I'm always like, I can't be bothered by people that pure waste my time or mess me around or patch me or do stuff like that. Like, I'm like, when they start doing that, I'm like, that's a pain in the arse. But then I always end up getting invested with lassies who are like cancelling at the last minute, fucking being at like not messaging me back about stuff and shit like that, and making it pure mysterious and awkward and stuff like that, and like just in a way where I need to pure chase them around, and I'm always kind of like, I want somebody that's straightforward. Essentially, my idea of what my type is somebody who's straightforward, but then it's always the complete opposite that I always end up being attracted to, really. So
But you heard it here first. If you are a girl out there who is complicated and is very aloof and shows all the signs of red flags, do slide into Paul's DMs, because despite his best intentions, he will fancy you. So there you go.
I'm making the best effort to try and curve this at the moment, but
he's in rehab right now. He's in rehab. So let's have a listen to our last submission of the day.
The red flag that I've encountered the most, which has been a thing that people do a lot, is bringing their ex baggage into the picture. Quite a lot of the time when people do end up like citing the fact that they're not over their ex, like sometimes it can be they bring this stuff to the other person's doorstep as if it's anything that they have to, as if they should be understanding and get that this relationship was so important and what happened was so important in this other person's life.
I totally agree. And it's that thing of like, when people are like, oh, it's a really understood thing of the rebound and people, being a rebound. And it's like, well, actually, that's not okay. Like, just because you need to have that experience, it's like not fine to be like, oh, well, I'm just painting this person as being a rebound without actually recognizing that they're a fully functioning human who has needs or, just deserves respect and all that kind of stuff. And I think that this whole thing of being like, hey, just to let you know, like I'm still really sad and I had a really special ex. It's kind of implying that you are not special, and it's like, well, actually, you're in the wrong. There's wrong timing here, so you shouldn't be having a thing with me if you're gonna mistreat me and then repaint it and paint it over and say like, oh, it's because actually I'm like still sad, and it's like, okay, well, take some time away and get over it, but don't pull me into it,
You definitely don't want somebody who's like that, like kind of carrying that baggage around with them of like, the last person that I was with, treated me so badly and blah, blah, blah. But sometimes I'll be like, oh, well, I'll mention stuff like for the last relationship I was in or something, because it's the only thing I've got to relate it to, really. Do you know what I mean?
I think it's fine to like talk about it if it's a very separate issue, but if that's like seeping into your behavior or how this new relationship is, then it's like, no, deal with that and then start this new thing.
I think it's kind of refreshing sometimes when you speak to people about a situation and they tell you about stuff that they've been through, and then you can kind of relate the thing and you can bounce it off and it's quite decent. But then again, I have been in that situation of somebody dragging their old relationship into your relationship and not addressing it themselves, and it is a real kind of nightmare, because it's just like, especially if you're going to with someone you think that that they're kind of over it but they're not, and it's just like their problem. It is kind of like that's your thing to deal with before you start another relationship, especially if you're going to drag it in as such a big problem kind of thing.
And I think it's very common of like people kind of excusing their behavior because of this circumstance. So it's like, oh, well, actually, I was an arsehole because I've just gone through a breakup. And it's like, no, that's not an excuse. It might be like why you're feeling a certain way, but you are still in charge. It's like when people blame their parents, you know, what we were saying of like, if you go, okay, fair enough, you can have had a hard time, but at the same time, we are now adults that like, you can say, okay, well, maybe I've got like a strange relationship with, you know, a parent, or I've had an emotional heartbreak, but it's like, okay, well, also that is you're choosing to let that affect your behavior now. And it's like, it's not actually an excuse. And I think it's such an easy excuse with exes to be like, oh, I'm not over my ex. And it's like, that's not an excuse.
Yeah, none of those things are an excuse, you know what I mean? Like, you can't blame an ex, you can't blame your parents. Like, the only thing you can really pinpoint your behaviour to is what star sign you are, because that is the only scientific way that you can bring it. No.
Pisceans be cray. I'm just saying, we love a little cry.
Well, you know, the moon is having an interesting couple of days.
It's a pink moon right now, guys. I don't let you know.
So I think that about covers it for red flags. We'd like to thank our fantastic guest today, Paul Dock, for joining us. Paul, where can people find you online?
Instagram and Twitter. I'm just Paul Dock 93.
Yeah, at Paul Dock 93.
I'm both fine.
Excellent. And if you've not done already, check out Paul's videos, man, and his tweets. Fucking hilarious stuff.
So funny.
He's putting on there all the time, so do check him out. So thanks so much for joining us, mate. And if you have enjoyed this episode, please do remember to give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or wherever it lets you leave a review. You can also subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. And there is a video version that's available on YouTube.
And if you'd like to slide into our DMs, then you can get us at Debating Dating on Instagram, or you can send us a wee email if you want us to chat about anything in particular. Send us a wee voice note, any topics that you want covered, any stories. We're always eager to get them. So send us a wee email, debatingdatingpod@gmail.com, or on Instagram.
So thanks very much for listening, and I'll speak to you soon.
Bye.